apocalyptic signs are everywhere. There's been an explosion on the sun, a solar flare of a biblical proportion potentially could affect the earth. Now, BP Earthwatch did a video about 2 days ago, if I'm correct, of a pretty powerful solar explosion on May the 30th that was sending strong CMEs directly toward the earth. This morning, of course, this is June the 1st, and this morning there has been another explosive solar eruption, a solar flare that just erupted on the sun. It's a very active situation. A new sunspot is emerging over the sun's eastern limb and is crackling with C-class solar flares. And according to NASA's Solar Dynamic Observatory, they have caught an active region just releasing plumes and a ball of plasma. Goodness gracious, great balls of plasma had just been released from the sun's surface this morning during the very early hours of the June 1st. And the number of the sunspot, of course, is AR2661. This new sunspot still rotating into view. So it's a full size, potentially for stronger flares are not yet known. We don't even know what the potential damage of this could be. So we're to stay tuned for more information on it. But here's what I want you to know. We're going to get hit with this very powerful solar flare. It's not the largest I've ever seen. I've seen X-class flares. You guys know that. We've been watching this and studying these over the period of time. But BP Earthwatch is done. He told us that on the 30th, one was released, headed toward us. Now, this morning, another one's been released, headed toward us. Now, I just checked the earthquake map. It is very quiet. Shh, very quiet. Shh. But that's kind of dangerous because that means pressure's building. And we could have a significant release of a mega earthquake. And I think that it would not shock me if in the next 48 hours or so, we could potentially have a quake over 7 or higher somewhere in the world. And you know, as these tectonic plates, the pressures that are building in some of these are very, very, very concerning. We have had some earthquakes of some concern. 5.0 earthquake hit in the Jan Mayen Islands, and also there was a 4.9 in Chile, a 4.7 up in Indonesia, and a 4.5 in New Zealand, and we just had a 4.7 in Papua New Guinea. But it's been very quiet. Only 12 earthquakes in the last 24 hours. That is as quiet as I've seen it in the last 3 years. And with the pressure coming from the sun from May 30th, and again the release again today, and with NASA telling us that they don't even know how many more of these are going to be coming at us because this is a brand new sunspot that is extremely active. We're concerned, and we need to keep our eyes open, folks. That's why Jesus said these words, that in the last days, he said, well, there will be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and distress of nations with perplexity. The sea, the waves roaring. Men's hearts have failed them for fear, for looking after those things coming upon the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to come to pass, he said, look up, lift up your head, for your redemption is drawing nigh. And I think that it's even closer than you or I or anyone else can even imagine. Are you saved? Give your life to Jesus Christ before it is too late, because we are running
mainline Christian interpretations that are men's interpretations of the Bible, that the earth is 6,000 years old. I don't go with mainline science that it's 4 or 5 billion years old and we only get hit by asteroids every 2 million years, because now they admit, because of Shoemaker-Levy research and what happened with that comet, that no, it's happening every 100,000 or so. And satellites show us giant craters all over the world that have just been filled in with water or filled in with trees, filled in with foliage. I don't know all the mysteries of the universe, but I know this. The ring of fire from the Pacific Ocean all the way around from Asia to the tip of Chile has triggered everywhere in the last decade but key plates off California. Now, the sun's cooled off. That affects our climate. Is that doing it? Is it the magnetic field? He's the expert because he looks at all the studies, the full spectrum. So many experts at the university level just write their own little papers in their one little area and don't do the general research. He's with us for the rest of the hour, 5 minutes the next hour, standeo.com. And the last time he was on was over a year ago. Time flies, February 6, 2015. You can pull that interview up. You can hear it for yourself, but the body of his work's there, the books he's written. He has predicted things more accurately than anybody I have read or talked to. Here's the headline: Volcanic expert, super eruption coming. And now you see what they're calling unprecedented eruptions, unprecedented geological activity, tectonic activity. And going over his bio, he held an above top secret security clearance and worked undercover with the FBI. He was part of an exclusive black project specializing in the development of advanced technology. Stan's diverse background encompasses computer programming, marine architecture, advanced propulsion engineering, biblical studies, and earthquake forecasting. And I'm not going to go over all the things that he's breaking down, but we're going to get into earthquakes with him right now. Pretty wild stuff. Stan Deyo, great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me again, Alex. There's certainly a lot happening to talk about.
Well, everything you said over a year ago here, I thought it was 6 months ago, is basically now happening. Tell us what's happening from your research, what's coming next, because obviously the government and people are going to play this now.
Well, there are probably good reasons for that. Not that I side with the Illuminists. they have their own agenda, but the scientific community is hamstrung. And if they weren't, they have the fear of causing a panic if they predict an earthquake or a volcano and it doesn't happen. And so they're put in between a rock and a hard place to tell the public. And now then, of course, they've got a White House muzzle on them, so they can't say anything. I have gotten information out that is not mainstream or is not even on the internet from a couple of individuals who are involved inside USGS. And they have said that they've been making drivers, truck drivers, and technicians that are delivering stuff to USGS at Yellowstone, have been for the last 2 years, to not tell anybody about it, and the number of seismometers that they're putting in, and the fact that they're connected to a supercomputer. I think they've moved it from Texas now then to Utah, to the new center. But there's a lot of effort being pointed at Yellowstone, and you can see the evidence of it in a lot of the video coming out of there that they're allowing to come out. And also last month, toward the end of the month, they closed down the whole network of seismometers, updating and changing and whatever, but we got no feeds at that time from them. And Yellowstone is only one part of our problem. There are other volcanoes around the planet that are starting to erupt. Even North Korea has asked us, the United States, for help with one that's about to erupt there, a big one. And the earthquakes, well, now, in the last, 7, 8 days, we've seen a number of earthquakes. I'm just looking at it here on my map, which I sent to your producer. You can put it up. It shows the earthquakes over the last 2 weeks that are above a Richter 5.5. And you can see in that on the western side of the Pacific, the second row right image, if you want to click on that there. That's the one. Yeah, click on that. There you go. Now, the size of the circle indicates the magnitude. And over Japan, which is right over here on the left side of the Ring of Fire, you can see that they had not only a 6.3, but a 7.2 and a bunch of aftershocks in that area. And over in Ecuador, you can see they had a series of 7.9, a bunch of aftershocks. And in Guatemala, and near Central America there, and over off the coast of Australia, up in Vanuatu.
All around the Ring of Fire, but North America didn't get hit.
Yeah. Now, that's the issue. I heard you talking about that before we went to the break. Now, The problem with this is that it's not only California, it's the whole West Coast that hasn't released. And we know that up near Oregon and Washington, in the Juan de Fuca plate, that little kind of reddish area outlined there have been major releases of stresses that have been building up along the Ring of Fire, where these little red lines are here on the image I've got. Those are the edges of the tectonic plates. But scientists all over the world have noticed that there's a big gap in the northern hemisphere part of the Pacific Rim plate that is not releasing the seismic tension that's building up. And that is north of California. The bottom part of it comes down to the northern part of California in the Juan de Fuca plate. It is building up, and so that when it releases, it might release as much as a 9.2 Richter earthquake. Now, where it is situated, it would cause flooding down in California coast. It would cause tsunamis that would hit over into Japan. It would force a local tsunami to go maybe 160 miles up into Oregon through river valleys and things. It's a very precipitous situation, and that could then trigger the numerous faults that run parallel to the San Andreas plus the San Andreas and start breaking California up into islands. So I can understand why no one comes out and officially says this, because it would impact the economy of the United States and the world, for that matter, very negatively if the panic started. But they have been doing the right thing and saying, well, U.S. is saying, well, in the next 30 to 50 years, there's a 10% chance, or maybe a bit more, of a Richter 8 to 9 earthquake striking the northwest United States coastline. And they're trying to tell the people that think and look ahead, maybe you better do that. Maybe you better get prepared and get out of there, or at least be able to weather something like coming.
Sure, but you've been saying this for years, but now it's come out that a lot of top seismologists and volcanologists are afraid of having their funding cut. They're being told, don't panic the public. Plus, if thank God it doesn't happen, then they, quote, get discredited. But we saw the tsunami in Japan. We've seen the tsunamis before that kill hundreds of thousands in Asia. I mean, we're due for this. And a lot of seismologists, as you know, are saying they think it's a lot closer and is basically imminent. From your research and your sources, is it imminent? Is it 10 years off? What's really happening?
When you say imminent, do you mean this year? I don't know. There are certainly peculiar signals I'm getting in the research I've been doing. If you go back to my show images page, second row middle image, and click on that, you can see the first one I've published on the internet here in a number of years, where I've been trying to find a way to predict the big earthquakes a day, 2-3 days before they happen.
And we see seismic forecast Japan, beta test version. I know that's when George Norrie has you on a lot. You have been accurate, I'd say, what, about 80% of the time. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, and that was when I had access to the naval data at Monterey, California. And when they changed over the programs and the satellites and everything, they didn't do that report to the public anymore.
And that's what scares me, is they're shutting all the data down.
Well, probably with good intent, because I'm a wild card. I'm not financed by anybody but me and the good Lord. And, I'll say what I think, and I'll report what I see. And so if they let me use official naval data and explain how I was doing it and predict massive quakes, if I predicted this massive quake somewhere, it would be the same as them saying it, and they don't want to panic. They've got their own agenda for timing and release of the information. So I can understand. I'm not mad, but I found another place to get some of the information I used to use from the Navy. If you look at this image I got up there, that seismic forecast thing, you see that yellow circle around. Okay, well, now you can see that there's kind of green and pink, signals over the southern island of Japan. That's where we had those 2 big earthquakes on the outside of that circle, and it's moving upward on the islands of Japan. So there's more coming. And
all right, we got a long 18-minute segment coming up. We're going to come back, give you the floor to really break down the numbers and where the most dangerous places in the world are, where you believe the next big ones are coming. But it doesn't matter if it's in northern Europe. It doesn't matter where it is. Russia, Oklahoma, there's just earthquakes everywhere. There are maps put out by universities showing power-generating nuclear reactors around the world. There's really about 600 of them, 400 plus that are used for industrial use or powering cities. Of course, there's a lot of other classified ones as well. I mean, the University of Texas has an old shutdown atomic reactor. I'm not a nuclear physicist, but I mean, they admit it's there. The smokestack down there in UT, it goes down to it. It's a steam stack. And they got another, one of the biggest research reactors in the world is at the J.J. Pickle Center. And I tell people that and get emails saying, there's not reactors in Austin. You're making that up. You can go to UT's website and take a look, see it. And by the way, we're on the Balcones fault line. There are 5 different extinct or dormant volcanoes that are the hills of Austin. In South Austin, about 2 miles from where I sit. It looks like a Star Trek episode or something. It's beautiful, amazing. At a state park over there that's a volcano caldera that the park's in. And so I have some selfish questions for Stan Deyo in a moment about, we're seeing a lot of stuff happen. We're seeing a lot of things with the fault lines that are in the middle of the country. But I want to ask the question, why do they seem to build the reactors on fault lines? Well, is it that most of the population, 70% of the population lives on coastlines? Those tend to be fault lines where, the tectonic plates are driving up land, so it's out of the ocean. I mean, I guess that's it. Maybe I've answered my own question, but why do you build them on fault lines? Why don't you build them, out away from that and then have the power come in? We'll talk to Stan Deyo, StanDeyo.com, best-selling author, filmmaker, you name it, joining us here via video Skype from your offices. You've got the floor. It's hard for me not to jump in here, but just give us your presentation, where you think this is going, what's going to happen, and what you were breaking down before we went to break.
Okay, let's address a couple of things. First of all, Fukushima is on that image I had your producer pull up there, the second row for the second image. And I'll be addressing that. Now, this image shows 2 yellow circles. The one on the bottom left over Japan shows a circle around areas that have little green and red flashes or hot spots that I found when I used the method I used to determine earthquakes in advance. Now, in that circle, there's kind of a dark area from the left side of the circle over to the right between these 2 colored areas, and that's seabed. That's ocean. And that island has been split up there by an old fault. Now, when they say in Kyushu that they're thinking the island may be split in half, there's good reason for that, because that colored discoloration line goes through Kyushu, which is outside the circle there to the lower left, and goes right on up into the circle area. So I suspect that we will see more disastrous splitting of Kyushu over the next couple of years. In fact, over the next 6 to 7 years, I think we're going to see great increases in earthquake and volcanic activity. Now go up that picture to the second yellow circle, and the top part of it is over a brightly colored area of all kinds of colors, and that's at Fukushima. Now, I don't know whether I'm seeing a massive quake building there as part of an aftershock to the 2011 Richter 9, or whether I'm seeing leakages of heat from the Fukushima situation, because in that yellow circle at the top of Japan there, or say in the middle, you see a large black area surrounded by little colorful rainbow things around the edge of it. And out in the ocean, you see 2 more of those that are smaller. And I'm wondering if what I'm seeing there is anomalous heating from the Fukushima reactor water dumping into the Pacific there. Now, that's enough on that. What I want to get back to is your statement about the why they build the reactors where they do on the fault lines. One of the things that's, necessary with a nuclear reactor is you've got to cool the rods to get the heat energy, to get steam, to produce power. And so you need to have a flow of low temperature, clean water coming past and through your reactor. So they build them close to streams. Okay. The streams form in areas and depressions, basically, where there are fractures in the Earth's crust underneath, little fault lines. Now, when you do that, of course, it's darned if you do, darned if you don't. When you cool a reactor, that's good. But when you're sitting near a fault line, that's bad. So they weighed, the cost to the environment of, chemical fuels and, hydrocarbons and things versus doing it this way and solving it later. I don't know how they're going to solve the problem, getting rid of all the nuclear waste, but that's that issue. Now, something that people may not, in fact, I'm pretty sure aren't aware of, is there are new papers in physics, 2 or 3 of them coming out now, which are making the universe a lot younger. Not saying 6,000 years, but I'm saying a lot younger than we thought in terms of 15 billion years. And it's a simple thing. In physics, if you have like sound and you speak in the air, and that sound will travel at 1,100 feet per second, and air is kind of light, not very dense. But if you take that same sound and put it through solid bar of nickel, it'll travel at 5 times that speed, at 5,500 feet per second, roughly. Now, it says that the more dense the medium that carries the wave is, the faster the wave goes. Now, the Big Bang, remember how they're all talking about Hawking's and the rest of it? In the beginning, there was this little bitty tiny space in the middle of nothing, which was where all the universe was stored. And then there was, boom, the Big Bang, and it expanded out. Well, think about this. It was so incredibly dense. It was at least 30 million times, maybe more dense than it is now.
It was going a lot faster at the beginning, so things are slowing down.
And so when you date the universe and you date rocks and things by radiometric methods, which depend on the speed of light being constant, they're all up the chute. You have to use an exponential curve and apply that to your figures. So I'm going to say I'm one of those nuts that agree with the Bible scholars saying, 6,000 years. Well, they're talking about from the Garden of Eden. No, not for the whole age of the earth. But the earth, I'd say, is probably less than 50,000 years, maybe even less than that.
Well, Stan, let me just say this. I mean, I'm a Christian myself. I disagree with some of the Bible scholars' interpretation on things and then making a big fight with science when so much of the Bible is proven by science. But mainline science, who isn't even debating us on this with Shoemaker, Levy in the comments, they now admit, okay, we're not getting hit every few million years by big asteroids. We're getting hit every 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. They can now see the craters all over the earth. It's mainline science, you're right, is now admitting that because of the way that they're dating things, because it was moving faster at the beginning. I mean, that's mainline science, you're right. Mainline supercomputers are now finding dark matter outside dimension that's much more energetic than even ours, saying we may be a side dimension, not actually, let's say, the most energy dominant. There's an outside energy field holding everything together. Top scientists say it's like we're a simulation in the mind of God. And so a lot of atheists, top mathematicians and others are actually getting religion, and genetic engineers are getting religion as they look into things and see how designed it is. This didn't just come together like a Swiss watch out in the desert, as a lot of Christians point out. So I hear what you're saying. Clearly, they go, when you go to the Grand Canyon, they'll have a geologist go, over 1 billion years, the water cut through here. Well, I'm no hydrologist, but I live in Austin, Texas, where they admit that the canyons and things are formed because of underground rivers on the fault lines that are in Austin from the earthquakes. They even admit that there, and that exactly that's what forms a lot of these cliffs and streams. Isn't millions of years of the stream. There's a crack in the ground, underground rivers. That's what's cutting through, is the underground rivers and the seismic activity. But the thing is, real scientists admit that, but when they tell the public, they tell you it's 4 or 5 billion years. That's why the Grand Canyon did this. They're actually pushing an agenda when they actually, you talk to anybody, they go, no, evolution's not like they teach. Yeah, the earth isn't like they teach. They've been teaching this. It looks like a lie on purpose. Do you agree with that? And what's the agenda?
Well, I agree with that. And the agenda is, I think it is a massive deception of the people of the world to make them think there's a gradualism, to everything, and it takes millions of years. And, obviously the biblical tales couldn't be true because, it had took billions of years for man and Neanderthal and all this Homo sapiens and all the derivative things. So therefore, they don't want you to look at the history of Earth in the form of what's called catastrophism. Catastrophic things happen. And I'm telling you and your listeners here, Alex, believe me today, that the Garden of Eden was only back about 6,000 years. I found it. The Atlantis, I have found that. That was back only about 5,000 years. I know where it is today and how big it is, and I even found where the capital island is.
Well, Plato, they found almost everything Plato wrote about 2,300 years ago. He was a mainline historian, yep. and he said it existed. And we'll have you back about all this, because I know there's a lot of ancient civilizations, things you have found, and others have found. They're having to admit this now. But specifically, was Plato right about Atlantis' location?
Oh, yeah. What was incorrect was what the translators, or the people that read the translations of Jowett, how they read where the pillars of Hercules were. Because what they all talk about the Pillars of Hercules being where the gateway to Atlantis.
And the Masons are obsessed with the two pillars.
And who are? Oh, Masons. Yeah, right. They are. Boaz and Joachim. Now, but it's in another part of Plato's account. It says that the Straits of Hercules, and the Straits is a small waterway that joins two great oceans. And I found the real Straits of Hercules, and they're on the border between Syria and Turkey. And I'll show this in a lecture I'm giving in July in Colorado Springs. But on my website, if you there's just so much of this catastrophism that's important.
The point is, every ancient culture said that just suddenly it'd be dark for a year and huge explosions, and whether it was asteroids, volcanoes, every culture reports about just devastation and then just everybody disappearing.
Look, let me point you to something that explains that we have been hit recently by a large, huge meteor. You used to think that, I'm sure, that the Chicxulub meteor that made impact in the Yucatan Peninsula and the Gulf of Mexico, that was big. If you look on the first row, second image, click on that, you will see I've drawn a little red circle on the right side of the picture of the impact crater of Chicxulub. And on the left side of India, I have drawn the yellow circle representing the diameter of the Chicxulub impact. But the red one is the impact crater that just now trying to prove was a meteor, and I can prove it. It was 300 miles in diameter. It was 22 times the energy of the impact at Chicxulub. This broke the continents of Pangaea apart, and it was not 100 million years ago, as classical science says. It was less than 5,000 years ago. There were catastrophic things that happened and moved continents apart and shoved India up into the Himalayas. This is catastrophism, and it's not separated by millions and billions of years. So people cannot sit comfortably and think that we're not going to see in the next 6 or 7 years some serious tectonic occurrences. Look at the top right image, top row right image. This is from NASA, and it's an image showing the mass concentrations, the variations in gravity on the surface of the Earth. And they cannot explain why that purple and blue one over right at the base of India is short of mass. It's like there's a chunk taken out of the sub-Earth area there, the mantle. And if you look over in the Atlantic, in the upper right, you will see there is a raised area, in the middle of the Atlantic going up to Iceland. That area, move a bit further over to the right there on your screen. Yeah, that's the one. That area is over 2.3 million miles in area, and it was caused by the meteor that hit the east coast of India, over in that purple area, when India was stretched down there where it used to be. It went underneath Saudi Arabia and up into the Atlantic Ocean, pushing a lot of mass ahead of it, and formed the Atlantic Bulge and the Indian Ocean shortage of mass. That was a catastrophe that sank Atlantis. That was a catastrophe that caused the great flood of Noah. It is real, and people need to get into the catastrophic mode of history to understand it properly.
Well, I go back to Shoemaker Levy, that, what was the year that happened? But the comet broke up, hit one of the big gas giants. I remember even seeing it on mainline TV. Yeah, Jupiter. And I had Shoemaker and his wife on, and then they died in a car wreck. I've also had Levy on. But they had to admit, okay, you're right. It looks like we're getting hit by asteroids and stuff all the time. Huge ones, on a more routine basis. I mean, what hit Russia, back at the turn of the last century? We know this stuff's going on because we can now watch other planets being pounded on a routine basis by giant asteroids and comets.
Yeah, I can see that. And we do have to admit the fact, even some of these things like the meteor that burst over that Russian town, Shibelinsk or whatever it is, I forget the name of it exactly, but that was
Champatka or whatever?
Say again?
I'm going from memory. It's Champatka? What's the famous one that blew trees down for hundreds of square miles?
Oh, Tunguska.
That's it. We can show
My grandfather actually saw that come over the northern United States before it exploded over Russia. He said it made a moaning sound like a cow moaning or something. It was huge.
Wow. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. Look, there's so much to discuss. We're probably not going to get it all in this show, but I'm trying to be a digital Indiana Jones and to go and locate things with Google Earth and other data to tell the real history of Earth and the civilizations and The things I'm finding, let me just tell you this right now. I've said this already, so it's not a big secret. Saudi Arabia, all of the Arabian Peninsula, is the major landmass of Atlantis. I found the fertile plain they're talking about. It's 110 miles wide by 330 miles long. It left a scar in the surface of the Earth, and I found that on NASA data. And the capital island of Atlantis is on the west or southwest coast of the Persian Gulf. There's 3 or 4 locations that might be it, but it's underneath water and sand and stuff. I think we found it, and I found over 1,700 stone artifacts left by the Atlanteans. I do believe that Noah lived in the Arabian Peninsula, was an Atlantean per se, and that the flood was caused by the impact, and it did recede quicker in other parts of the earth than it did in the Arabian Peninsula. That's why they have all that sand and stuff, 80 feet of mud and stuff in the Persian Gulf region that settled over a year's time. Anyway, there's just so much that I can't begin to tell you what I've been discovering. It's just, I looked at the Exodus. Where did it really happen? What happened? Where was Moses standing when he saw the real Mount Sinai over in Saudi Arabia? It's mind-blowing stuff, and I'm going to share that as best I can in July. Maybe I'll write a book if there's time, but things are happening so quick, I often wonder if I'm going to get it out in time.
Stan Deo, you talk about things happening quick. It's gone from our inside sources talking about the elites going into bunkers, moving to New Zealand, to now it's all over the New York Times, RT, you name it, panicked elite, moving into these billion-dollar underground structures in Germany and places. Why are they running around like chickens with their heads cut off? Usually, they say because of economic unrest. Lloyd's of London says it's the worst ever. I'm not trying to be a fearmonger. It's the establishment that's acting like it's the end of the world. And some people say, no, Alex, political stuff is the cover. The elites don't care about the people anymore because they know something big's coming.
Yeah, I agree.
So, I'm asking you, what do you think? Is it economic? Is it military? Or is it a mix of earth changes? Why are they acting like they don't even care what we think?
Well, because, all right, you're going to roll your eyes at this, but back in the late 40s, early 50s, mankind did make contact with off-world beings, with humanoids, several types. And when I worked for Dr. Teller, his organization down in Australia building anti-gravity craft, I got fed a lot of information about these alien critters, and they fit with the biblical concept of a war in the heavens coming down to earth, and it fits with Genesis 6 and Atlantis and all that. So I
just know you've been accurate about the earthquakes, and you're a really smart guy, and the science you talk about I know fits with the real research out there. I know a lot of the elites and the occults are about worshiping fallen angels and things, and I know talks about that in Noah's time, so I understand there's a context to that, and the media always makes fun of it, but the elites, their creation story, even the New York Times admitted a few years ago, was the movie Prometheus. And so, the elites don't believe in evolution, folks. When you actually talk to them, they believe we were planted here.
Yes.
What's that term? Panspermia? Again, teleprompter free.
Panspermia, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and some of them think that we were planted by little microbes that were on dust and particles floating through the universe from other places that had life. And
that's just ridiculous. Folks, give me.
Look, any thinking person, any logical person can see that the incredible, intricate, interlocked systems of humans and animals and vegetation on this planet could not have happened from one spontaneous act.
A super, ultra-advanced consciousness did it, God. And then I guess the Bible says the stuff we're dealing with is a bunch of fallen scum who's just a bunch of trash. I don't know how you describe it.
Yeah, I agree. And look, people think that, well, if God is perfect and that why do we have wars and this and that? But if you read in the scripture, God is in the middle of a war in the heavens with a rebellion, and Satan is the leader of that rebellion. And, of course, the Masons are on his side, Lucifer. And when you have two warring factions, if God, who is, the creator of all the factions, says, look, I'm going to kill everything on the earth with a flood, and yet some survive, some giants and bits and pieces over in the Americas, whatever survive, they say, well, that can't be right because God's not perfect. But God is in the middle of a war with Satan, who is so intelligent that he was the covering guard over the throne of God. So we're dealing with a war here of immense proportions off the planet and now on the planet. And I don't know any other way to say that. I know it sounds like Stanley the
Well,
Nuts.
I don't get into all this stuff, but here's the bottom line. I've studied the elite. I've snuck into Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones. I've gotten material from Skull and Bones members exclusively here through Charlotte Iserby and others whose father is in it. They believe they are getting divine knowledge from off-world beings. I mean, you take Galton, Wedgwood, Huxley, Darwin admitted in his full writings that he was channeled his evolution of the species and you know all the rest of it. And they were deep occultists, and they envisioned biometrics and computers and everything. They then built this modern world to control us. So if they're not getting it from the devil, which liberal media outlets make fun of me when I say this, but half the world supposedly believes in God and the devil, so why is it bad when we take it and put a modern context to it only for the reasons of debate?
It's not bad. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, we can't continue like we have been for generations where we just blindly accept what some guy, his interpretation of history is. I mean, you know that whoever survives the battles writes the history and is colored by their input, their psyche. Now we have to wake up. We have the internet. We have an increase in knowledge, like the Bible said, that is immense. Use that knowledge, study, to see what the truth is.
When do you, just looking at all the maps, I know it's dead reckoning, but you've been proven really accurate. When do you think the big one's coming, and what's the most dangerous area on the West Coast?
Most dangerous area, I believe, is the Juan de Fuca area, and I expect that any tick of the clock, but primarily when you have a full moon or a new moon, when the gravitational stresses on the surface of the planet are the greatest. Jim Berglund, you know, his theory about that I do agree with, and we're approaching that tomorrow. Not that I'm saying that the great one's coming tomorrow, but the stresses are building, so watch for full moons and new moon periods. A day or so either side for the triggering of the great ones, and that occurs twice a month. So,
what about the Midwest, and what about places like Austin? What about the fault lines here? A lot of stuff's becoming active again.
Well, yeah, and I think that formation there that runs across Texas was probably partly a result of the Chicxulub meteor impact down in the Gulf, at the Yucatan Peninsula. So when the fault lines of the world start to shake, and I think it's because the core of the planet is heating up, and there's a lot more we need to study. I just encourage people to do that and not to watch too much TV.